I was never supposed to be down there. I was never supposed to set foot anywhere near Cell 31. But when the alarms blared and the cold, sterile hallways of Blackridge Institute drowned in flashing red light, I made a choice that cannot be undone. I pressed a button. A single, simple action. An override to a security protocol I did not understand. And in doing so, I set it free. Before we dive deeper into the darkness, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the like icon if you're enjoying this journey into the unknown. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or any eerie encounters you've had. Your stories might just be our next inspiration. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a twist in the tale. Let's venture further into the shadows together. Dr. James Holloway was not a hero. He was not some rogue scientist who had stumbled upon the government's dark secrets and vowed to expose them. No, he was just another cog in the machine, another worker in a place that buried its secrets under miles of concrete and steel. He hadn't joined Blackridge Institute out of curiosity or ambition. He had joined because he was drowning in debt, and the government paycheck was a lifeline. He had a background in biomechanical engineering, specializing in neurological interfaces, bridging the gap between human thought and artificial systems. Cutting-edge, revolutionary work, the kind that, in the outside world, would have taken decades to be approved. At Blackridge, it was just another classified project. He had been working there for 3 years. 3 years of long hours, sealed-off laboratories, and mandatory silence. He had seen things that made his skin crawl, things that shouldn't exist. But Cell 31? He didn't even know it existed until that night. Holloway had been assigned to routine security maintenance that evening, a bullshit task, really. The higher-ups had insisted on hands-on verification of the automated lockdown system, and since Holloway's clearance level was low, it was his job to check the failsafes manually. It was boring work. Tedious. Swipe a keycard, enter a code, check the logs. Swipe, enter, check. He had done it 100 times before. But when he reached Section 6, deep in the lower levels, something was off. The doors here weren't like the others. They weren't numbered normally. The cells in Section 6 didn't have names. They had codes. P01, P02, P03. No windows, no identifiers, just reinforced titanium blast doors. Holloway's clearance levels shouldn't have even allowed him access. But the moment he scanned his keycard, the system let him in. Warning, unauthorized access. The message blinked on the screen, but the door clicked open anyway. His pulse quickened. That's not supposed to happen. And then he saw it. Cell 31. Unlike the other cells, this one had a label, not a code. A name. Or at least, it had once been a name, because now it was nothing but a thick, black smear, as if someone had desperately tried to erase it. Holloway's breath turned shallow. Something about this door felt different. The air was colder here. The reinforced steel hummed, like it was containing something alive. The logs made no sense. Every other cell had detailed records, but Cell 31, no dates, no experiments, just a single entry. Do not open. No further data available. Holloway frowned. That was impossible. Every subject had records. Even the worst ones, the ones that barely qualified as human, had notes, test results, something. But Cell 31? It was as if it didn't exist. And then the alarm went off. The corridor flashed red. A low droning siren echoed through the facility. Holloway's earpiece crackled to life. Security breach detected in Section 6. All personnel initiate lockdown protocol immediately. Holloway's blood turned to ice. He wasn't supposed to be here. He turned to leave, but then his tablet buzzed. A new command flashed on screen. Override lockdown? Yes or no? Holloway's mind raced. Why was he getting this prompt? Only senior-level staff should have access to containment overrides. He hesitated. More alerts flooded the screen. Critical containment failure imminent. Manual reset required. His heart hammered against his ribs. Manual reset? If the system was malfunctioning, He had to override it before the lockdown trapped him inside. He swiped his keycard, entered his clearance code, pressed the button, confirming override. Containment doors disengaged. The hissing of depressurized air made his stomach drop. The lights flickered. The heavy steel door of cell 31 slid open. The chamber was pitch black. A sharp, metallic scent curled into his nose. The kind of smell you'd associate with rust or blood. Holloway's fingers trembled as he reached for his flashlight. Click. A cold white beam sliced through the darkness. The cell was empty. No restraints, no furniture, no one inside. And yet, Holloway felt something. Something was here. He took a step inside, and then he heard it. A voice. Soft, whispering, but not from the room, not from the walls, from inside his head. You should not have done that. A cold, paralyzing dread slithered up Holloway's spine. His flashlight flickered just once, and in that brief, stuttering second of darkness, he saw something, a shape, a shadow that was not his own, standing right behind him. The light snapped back on, and the room was empty. Again. But cell 31 was open now, and there was no going back. There was something in the room with me. I couldn't see it, but I felt it. A pressure in the air. A presence just out of sight, just beyond the edges of the light. And then, the door slid shut. A heavy, metallic clang that sealed me inside. No. I lunged for the control panel. Swiped my keycard. Invalid access. I slammed my fist against it. Tried again. Invalid access. The system had locked me out. My breath turned shallow. The silence in the room was wrong. Not just still, but too still. No hum of ventilation, no sound of distant machinery, as if something had swallowed the noise, as if the world beyond the door no longer existed. And then, the whispering returned. Not from my earpiece, not from the speakers, from inside my own skull. James. A pulse of cold spread through my chest. No one here knew my first name. Not the guards, not even my supervisor. I was always just Dr. Holloway, a clearance badge, a number on a file. You hear me now? I stumbled back, hitting the wall. My fingers dug into the steel, as if bracing myself would keep my mind from splitting open. The flashlight flickered, once, twice. The beam shuddered, throwing erratic shadows across the floor, and in that broken, stuttering second of darkness, something moved. Not a shift, not a blur. A shape, impossibly tall, standing in the farthest corner of the cell. And then the light stabilized. The corner was empty, but the whisper remained. You let me out. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. At some point, the door unlocked on its own. I staggered out, pulse hammering in my throat, and nearly collapsed into the corridor. The hallway was wrong, empty. The alarms had stopped. The flashing red lights had vanished. The entire section had gone silent. I gripped my earpiece. Holloway to control. Do you copy? Nothing. No static, no interference. Just dead air. I forced myself to move. I needed answers, needed to find someone, anyone, who could explain what the hell was happening. I made my way to the security station at the end of the corridor. The control room had its own cameras, an independent system that monitored every inch of Section 6. I pulled up Cell 31's feed. The screen flickered. And then, the timestamp rewound itself. Not manually, not from my input. The system moved on its own, skipping back 10 minutes to the moment before I had entered the cell. The video played. I saw myself, standing at the threshold, keying in the override, the door sliding open. I watched as I stepped inside. And then, nothing. The room on the screen was empty. The Holloway on the feed, he wasn't there. The entire 10 minutes of footage showed nothing but an empty cell. No figure, no flashlight beam, no me. I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw, like something had crawled inside my lungs and refused to leave. My hands were trembling. I checked the corridor camera next. Fast-forwarded to when I should have been leaving the room. Nothing. The hallway stayed deserted. According to the system, I had never been there at all. I turned from the screen, nausea rising in my gut. I needed to get out, get to a supervisor, find someone. A sound stopped me. A single, sharp breath. Not mine. slow, measured. Right behind me. I turned so fast the room blurred. No one was there. I was alone. But I could still hear it. Inhale, exhale loud, a breath that did not belong to me. I backed away from the console, out into the corridor. Something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. I rushed toward the elevator, my best way out of Section 6. The doors slid open before I reached them. My heart lurched. Someone was inside. I exhaled, relief surging through me. Finally, someone else. But then I saw his face, and the relief curdled into something else. Something cold. The man inside the elevator was one of the security officers. I recognized him from routine patrols. His mouth was slightly open. His arms hung limp at his sides. His eyes, black. Not like they had rolled back, not like they were bleeding, just gone. Empty sockets staring into me. I stumbled backward. The doors started to close. And then, he moved. Not a step, not a lunge, just his head, tilting, just slightly, as if he could still see me. The doors shut and the elevator descended, taking whatever was left of him with it. I ran, blindly, desperately. I didn't stop, not when I passed more empty corridors, not when I passed other offices, doors open, chairs still spinning, but no people, no bodies, just absence. I reached the main security hub, swiped my card, denied. I slammed my fist against the panel. Come on, come on. The overhead speakers crackled to life. I froze. A voice came through, but not from the security system, not from the facility's PA system, not from anywhere it should have. It came from inside my own earpiece, a whisper, soft, familiar. James. I ripped the earpiece out and threw it against the wall. The voice didn't stop. You hear me now? I backed away. You let me out. The temperature plunged. Frost spread along the floor. The lights flickered, and then from the very end of the hallway, a shadow stepped forward. Not a person, not a figure, just a shape. Tall, stretching, its outline shifting like it was never meant to exist in this world. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The whisper came again. Closer now. Do you remember me? A pulse of memory slammed into my skull. Images, a hospital, a burning building, a name I should have forgotten, a name that belonged to someone who had died years ago. James, it whispered, stepping closer. It's been so long. I had made a mistake that couldn't be undone. I had opened the door. Now the thing in the shadows was coming for me. It moved with a purpose. Slow, deliberate. Its presence filled the hallway, pressing in on all sides like it was growing with every step it took toward me. The air was thick with a cold that didn't belong here. The kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made you question reality. I couldn't move. Not because I was frozen with fear, not because I couldn't think, but because I knew better. I knew that if I ran, if I even flinched, the thing in the hallway would be on me in a heartbeat. I took a shaky step back, my feet sliding across the smooth floor as if the ground itself was resisting me. I could hear the thing's breath, ragged but rhythmic, almost too calm for the situation. It knew me, knew my name. James. The whisper came again, sharp and clear, right inside my head. I could feel it reverberating, not in my ears, but in the deep, hidden places of my mind. James, I never wanted this. The voice was familiar in a way I couldn't quite place, but I knew it. I knew it. Something flashed in my mind, a memory, half-formed like a picture in a fog. A woman. No, not just any woman, Claire. A name that struck a chord deep inside me. Something I had buried long ago. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. It was impossible. The fog thickened, the air felt too thick, my heart beat too loud. You're not who you think you are. The voice was close now, right behind me. I dared not look. I had to move, had to find a way out. I turned, my hand instinctively reaching for the nearest emergency exit. But it was locked. All the doors were locked. My mind raced, searching for an answer. Something to get me out of this, something to get me away from the thing that was coming closer and closer, its breath now like a growl in my ear. But it was no use. I was trapped. I could feel it, its fingers brushing against my skin, icy cold and inhuman. The touch sent a shock of panic straight through me, but I couldn't scream. My throat was too tight. "You should have stayed away, James." The voice was no longer a whisper. It was real now. Deep. Resonant. As if it came from the very walls of the facility. I tried to turn again, my eyes wide, searching for any sign of the thing, any shadow or shape I could fight against. But there was nothing. Nothing but that feeling. That pressure in the air. The sense that the space around me had shifted, warped, like I wasn't standing in a hallway anymore. I wasn't in a facility anymore. I was somewhere else. The ground beneath my feet gave way, the walls began to bend, and the lights flickered, casting a sickly greenish hue. The world around me distorted like a mirage, and I stumbled, dizzy and disoriented. But then, through the haze, I saw it. A figure. Claire. Her face was pale, gaunt, as if she hadn't eaten or slept in years. Her eyes, those black eyes fixed on me, unblinking, unseeing. She reached for me and I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. "James." The voice was hers now, but it wasn't just her voice, it was tainted, twisted. Her hand was cold, colder than I thought possible. Her fingers brushed against mine and I saw it all. The truth. I had been part of something terrible, something I couldn't remember. But now it all came rushing back. The experiments, the procedures, the thing in the cell. It wasn't just a thing. It was a project, an experiment gone wrong. I had helped create it. It was never meant to be released. It was supposed to stay locked away, contained, hidden from the world. But I had let it out. And now it was coming for me. "You should have let me stay, James. You should have let me rest." The words from Claire, or whatever was left of her, cut through me like a knife. The thing, the entity that had been released from cell 31, was her. Or at least, a twisted version of her. But that wasn't all. The truth didn't stop there. I felt a jolt of realization shoot through me like an electric shock. The thing, whatever it was, had taken her mind. Claire had been the first test subject. Her mind was transferred, uploaded into the system. They'd been using her consciousness in the experiments for years. And now, she was nothing more than a shell, a digital construct, trapped inside the system, trying to reach out, trying to call for help. But I hadn't helped her. I had freed her, only to make things worse. I had unleashed something far more dangerous than I could ever have imagined. The walls closed in, the reality around me warped again, and I could see the twisted face of Claire's digital form, her expression frozen in a mixture of pain and anger. Her voice echoed inside my mind, distorting, changing. "I never wanted this, James." But it wasn't her anymore. Not really. It was the thing. The experiment, the entity that had taken her, that had used her. And now it was using me. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I was trapped. Trapped in a world that no longer made sense. And then, the lights went out. The darkness was suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, but I could feel it. The thing, its presence all around me, closing in. The walls rattled, the floors shook, a roar of metal, of electricity. And then, silence. I was alone, at least, I thought I was. But then from the deepest corner of my mind I heard it. "James." It wasn't her voice, it was mine. "You should have stayed away." I couldn't breathe. The air, thick and oppressive, filled my lungs like molten lead. I tried to force it out, but no matter how much I gasped, it was like I was drowning, suffocating in the nothingness. The silence was deafening, louder than any scream, any sound I'd ever heard before. The darkness, too, was so suffocating. It wasn't just a lack of light. It felt alive, pressing against my body, closing in from every angle. Every corner of my mind screamed for escape, but there was nowhere to run. I stood frozen, my eyes wide, straining to see in the void, but there was nothing, only the empty, crushing blackness. I had to find something. A door, a light, anything. My heart beat faster. The panic was creeping in, clawing at the edges of my mind, but I refused to let it take me. I couldn't break. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. I forced myself to move, stumbling forward in the pitch black, my hands reaching out in front of me, desperate to make contact with something, anything. My fingers brushed against walls that felt cold and jagged, unnatural. I was in a corridor I knew. But it wasn't a corridor I had ever walked in before. It felt like a place that shouldn't exist. My thoughts were fragmented. I couldn't tell where I was, or even when I was. The line between the real world and this dark space was starting to blur. The air was wrong. It didn't belong to the lab anymore. It didn't belong to anything I knew. James? The voice came again, sharp and clear, cutting through the darkness. But it wasn't a voice I recognized. Not Claire's. Not the thing from Cell 31. This was different. This was something older. Something that had been lurking beneath it all. It was mine. James, you should have left her. I froze. My blood turned to ice. The voice was a part of me, yet separate. A distant echo. I felt it in my chest, deep in my core. It wasn't just words. It was a truth. The voice didn't speak out loud. It didn't need to. It was inside my mind. I could feel it inside me, worming its way into my thoughts, into my soul. The truth, James. You don't deserve to know it. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. My body lurched, unsteady, as if gravity itself had turned against me. I braced myself against the walls, struggling to stay upright, but everything was shaking, swirling, twisting. And then I saw it. A flicker in the darkness. A shadow. At first it was just a trick of the light, or the lack of it. But no, this was real. The shadow was growing. It stretched, bloomed, expanding in ways that defied reason. The edges were sharp, jagged, as if they were cutting through the air itself. It was more than just a shadow. It was an entity. A figure. A face I knew. It was Claire's face, but it wasn't. Her skin was ashen, her eyes hollow, her expression twisted in a way that made my stomach turn. Her features were wrong. Unnatural. As if something had been grafted onto her, something that didn't belong. You never should have come here, James. Her voice was different now, layered with distortion, with the weight of something older, more powerful. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my throat had closed up, the words trapped inside my chest. The shadow, her shadow, was getting closer. I could feel it now, just inches from me. Its breath cold on my skin. The thing in the darkness was alive. Alive in a way that nothing should be. This is your fault. The words echoed, resounding inside my skull. My knees buckled. I fell to the floor, my hands hitting the cold, jagged ground beneath me. The walls seemed to close in, squeezing tighter and tighter with every passing second. I tried to push against them, but they were everywhere. The space was shrinking. The darkness was swallowing me whole. You opened the door. I could barely hear the voice now. It was drowned out by a low, guttural sound, something deep and inhuman. I couldn't understand it, but I didn't need to. It was the sound of something ancient, something that had been locked away for centuries. And it was coming for me. The shadows shifted again, swirling around me like a storm, pulling me in, dragging me further into the void. I struggled, pushing, clawing at the air, but it was useless. The force was too strong, the weight was too much. I could feel it now, a pressure building in my chest. Something was inside me, something that shouldn't be there. It was pushing against my ribs, clawing its way through my veins. My breath quickened, my heartbeat sped up. It was taking over. I fought harder. I screamed. But there was no sound, only the sensation of being drowned in that thing. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The storm in my chest vanished. The weight lifted. The air was still, silent. I opened my eyes, and I saw her again, Claire. Her eyes were wide and empty, her face pale and lifeless. She stood just inches away, her presence suffocating, pressing down on me. Her lips parted and the words came again. James, you know the truth now. I didn't understand. The truth? What truth? What was it? But before I could ask, the air shifted again. The darkness split apart like paper, revealing a blinding light. A light that burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. I had to shield my eyes, but I couldn't. The light pierced through every crack, every crevice, seeping into my skin, into my mind. "It's time, James." The voice was gone, replaced by a sickening hum. The light was getting brighter, so bright that it was no longer possible to distinguish what was real. I could feel myself being pulled, tugged toward the light, my body refusing to obey. I screamed again, but no sound came. And then, as the light consumed me, I saw it. The truth. The walls of cell 31 crumbled away, and I was standing in the middle of a dark room. A laboratory, but different. I could hear Claire's voice in my mind. "I never wanted this. You didn't want this. You freed me, James, but you can't escape." My heart stopped. And then I understood. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dark tales and eerie explorations. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any chilling experiences you've had. And don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Stay curious, stay cautious, and until next time, keep your eyes open in the shadows.